Niger, in West Africa, has about 25 million people and faces serious challenges in living standards. Only Chad and South Sudan rank worse on the UN Human Development Index. Sadly, Niger is caught in a bitter coup that might escalate into a regional war, putting the country in a tough spot. War is never good, and for a vulnerable population like Niger's, it could be disastrous. The region already deals with violence and instability, making this situation even more concerning. This crisis has the potential to set Niger back many years. To understand what's happening, we need to look at the country's economics. Despite being poor, Niger has valuable resources, but understanding how people interact with these resources is crucial. This economic perspective sheds light on the tensions in the developing situation. Despite having the seventh largest uranium reserves globally, it's at the heart of major global issues affecting things like economic prosperity in Northern Africa, cooperation in the EU, global investments in China, electricity prices, and even sanctions on Russia due to the Ukraine invasion. And when you look at the economics, it will give insight into how changes in one part of the world can impact seemingly unrelated things. With economic struggles and regional instability, how does Niger cope? And what's the impact on global economic powers? Could a potential war in Africa undo decades of progress in these economies? Unfortunately, Niger, one of the world's poorest countries, has faced intense political instability since its inception. In the 1960s, this country claimed independence from being a former French colony. Since then, governments have changed a lot, like a game of musical chairs. The current rulers, or the ones in the process of being kicked out, are calling themselves the Seventh Republic, which might sound fancy, but let's be real, it's not that great. Before this, there were 6 other republics and 4 military regimes. The current government, in charge since 2010, has faced attempts to overthrow them and sketchy elections. Furthermore, this country is stuck in the middle of nowhere, with its only route to the world's oceans for trade separated by thousands of tough kilometers. While Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan are technically farther from the oceans, they have better transport links. Niger and Chad, on the other hand, are like the loners of global trade. Their only connection to the oceans is the Niger River, which is okay for small ships, but not for big ones. So shipping goods in and out is a bit of a challenge. This river has to go on a truck and then onto another ship before reaching its destination. This makes moving things in and out of the country more expensive and slow. Even basic imports become a big luxury, costing more than in high-income countries. It also makes exporting almost impossible due to the lengthy process. Niger mainly exports valuable materials like gold and uranium, as shipping costs are worth it when they're worth millions. These exports, totaling $3.7 billion, are crucial for major economies. For instance, Niger exports uranium to France, meaning 25% of the EU's demand. Despite concerns about energy costs, uranium is relatively cheap to handle and transport. The recent coup in Niger and the closure of a major uranium mine in Canada have increased worries about fuel prices. In a market where energy costs are already a problem, previously it brings more challenges for normal trade and international involvement. It's not just about the cost of moving things in and out of the country. The Niger River is crucial, but it ends in neighboring Nigeria. Although Nigeria and Niger have had good relations, Nigeria, being more powerful, could cut off Niger from the outside world. They are doing this now. Niger, Nigeria, and the other West African countries are part of a group called ECOWAS, like a West African version of the EU. ECOWAS aims to promote stability between member states. Due to recent events in Niger, it has been suspended from ECOWAS, cutting off trade access to the Niger River. This adds to the challenges for Niger, which was already a poor and politically unstable country relying on another country's mercy. Foreign investors knew about this risk, making Niger's situation even tougher. And now the country had a tough choice to make. They had a valuable trade route, but it was expensive and prone to being shut down by floods, droughts, and erosion. Despite having abundant oil, foreign companies were hesitant to invest due to the risk of the government seizing their investments. This country, Niger, was facing challenges in developing its oil industry and becoming overly dependent on it. About 10 years ago, things started changing. Niger began pumping a bit of oil, mostly for local use. While fossil fuels aren't ideal for the environment, It was a necessary step for a poor country like Niger to provide energy for its people. The link between energy use and economic growth is strong, enabling homes to have light, cars to run, goods to be transported, and services like healthcare to operate. Niger heavily relied on Nigeria for market access and electricity. However, the recent political instability and coup led to Nigeria cutting off electricity and blackouts. Others might say a short-term difference. It highlights the importance of oil production and export through a pipeline to Chad, a move that could significantly boost export revenues. China is helping lots of countries in Asia, the Middle East, and Africa by giving them money for roads and stuff. They want to trade more and get resources. They use their banks and companies to do this, like how Western countries use big companies. For example, a Chinese oil company wanted to build a pipeline in Niger, but there were problems. First, a fight in Chad stopped it, then COVID-19, and now issues with a group called ECOWAS in Benin. This is bad because it could make things worse in these countries and even cause wars. It might also make people leave for Europe, which is already a problem. There are also bad groups there that like conflicts, so the situation is not good. And now there's this group called the Russian mercenary organization Wagner operating in the country. They get paid by some leaders to keep things in control, and in return, these leaders give them natural resources. Unfortunately, right now they seem to be the only ones benefiting. Now let's talk about Niger's economy. It's not doing great due to a lack of competitive industries, and it's about the size of North Korea's economy, which is not huge. The recent unrest might make things worse, but we don't have the numbers for that yet. Currently, Niger's economic score is 3 out of 10. It's one of the smallest economies globally, and the output is spread over 25.2 million people, a number that's growing fast due to high birth rates. However, the GDP per capita is just 590, which might seem low, but it's a bit misleading because many people from this country work informally, producing things mainly for their families and communities. This isn't counted in the formal GDP. Despite this technicality, Niger is still very poor, earning a 0 out of 10. Stability and confidence are not great in Niger. Political tensions make it challenging for even Chinese investments to build basic infrastructure like an oil pipeline. The country has a history of short-lived regimes, and power shifts have strained relations with neighboring countries, which Niger heavily relies on for services. So, in terms of stability, Niger scores a 0. Despite the challenges, Niger has seen significant growth in the last decade. Economic output has doubled, thanks to stability from mines and trade routes. However, this growth is partly due to the rapidly increasing population, and the output per citizen isn't as impressive. Still, considering the circumstances, Niger earns an 8 out of 10 for its recent economic growth. The country is really lacking proper industries, even in areas like crude oil extraction. Niger gets a low score of 2 out of 10 for its overall economic situation. This is because it struggles to establish industries that are common in other countries. It gets an extra point for having some natural resources, but its average score is just 2.6 out of 10. This puts Niger at a low position economically. Understanding economic data for developing countries like Niger can be tricky. But never say never. We hope Niger will shine one day. Once it gets out of its struggles, it'll be right on the track of prosperity.